Part 4. The wall cracks. You've seen the walls he's built around himself. But now you're starting to see cracks, small, subtle, but unmistakable. Question is, can you break through, or will they rebuild before you get the chance? It had been weeks since Sarah first walked into that gym, weeks since her first encounter with Jason that had left her with more questions than answers. The attraction, the chemistry, it was undeniable. But it wasn't just about the way he looked at her or how his smile made her heart race anymore. There was something deeper now, something unspoken but clear in every interaction. The walls Jason had built around himself were real. But lately, Sarah had started to notice something else too: cracks. Tiny fissures in his emotional armor that made her wonder if she could be the one to get through. Tonight, though, after yet another intense workout, something felt different. Jason seemed more worn down than usual, quieter than normal. And Sarah, with her heart pounding in her chest, couldn't help but feel like this might be the moment where she could finally understand the man who had always seemed so emotionally distant. The gym felt charged as they wrapped up their routine. It wasn't just the weights that had her feeling this way. It was the silence that hung between them, a silence that didn't feel awkward but heavy. This could be it. The beginning of a real conversation, the one where Jason might finally open up. The more Sarah tried to get close to Jason, the more she felt like she was pushing against a brick wall. He was always polite, always encouraging in the gym, but when it came to anything beyond that, anything personal, he always stepped back. It wasn't just his physical distance, but the emotional walls he'd erected around himself that were impossible to break through. And Sarah was beginning to wonder if she would ever be able to get past them. But then again, maybe there was more to Jason than she realized. Maybe if she gave it time, if she didn't push too hard, there was a chance to reach him. Every time she thought she was starting to see the real Jason, he would pull away again, and she would be left with more questions than before. Was she just imagining the connection between them? Or was Jason really keeping his emotions locked away so tightly that even she couldn't break through? And if he was holding back because of something in his past, how could she possibly understand it, let alone get him to open up? That night, after an especially grueling workout, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Jason was off. His usual confident, slightly detached demeanor had softened. There was a quietness to him now that felt different, almost vulnerable. They were stretching together, the cool-down routine always one of the few moments where they get to talk in between sets, but tonight felt different. The gym was quieter than usual, and the silence between them felt like it was waiting for something to be said. Something important. Sarah had been thinking about it for a while. She'd noticed how Jason never complained, never seemed to get frustrated or lose his cool, but what if there was more to him than that? What if, behind all that strength and control, he was tired of the same routine? "Hey," Sarah finally spoke, her voice a little hesitant but curious. "Do you ever get tired of this? You know, the gym, the same workout over and over?" Jason didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a deep breath, stretching his arms over his head before looking at her with a slight smile. "I guess I don't really think about it that way," he replied, his voice calm, but there was something softer in it than usual. "Consistency's important to me. It's part of who I am." Sarah nodded, her curiosity piqued. There was more there, she could tell. He wasn't just talking about workouts anymore. But she didn't push it. She could feel that opening, she could see that slight crack in his armor, but Jason wasn't quite ready to let her in. "Still," Sarah pressed on, not wanting to leave things hanging between them. "Doesn't it ever get boring?" she asked, her tone light but trying to break through the walls even if just a little. "I mean, we all need variety sometimes, right?" Jason's expression softened for a moment, his eyes searching for something in her face before he answered. "Maybe. But I like knowing what to expect. Life's unpredictable enough as it is. I guess I've just learned to appreciate the routine." Sarah didn't want to press too much. She could tell he was holding something back, something deeper. But she wasn't ready to let go either. There was something about the way Jason said it, something in his eyes that told her this wasn't just about gym routines or workouts. It was about his life, his control, and possibly the way he approached everything else, especially relationships. Before Sarah could say anything else, Jason exhaled, running a hand through his hair, his usual confident smile returning to his face. Look, it's just the way I am. I like things consistent. Keeps things simple, you know? Sarah wanted to reach out, wanted to ask him more, but something told her that now wasn't the time. Jason was pulling back, closing the door on whatever he had just opened up about. And Sarah respected that. She didn't want to push him too hard. Not yet. But the cracks were there. And they were getting bigger. As Sarah stood there, feeling the tension shift, she couldn't help but notice how Jason's body language had changed in the last few minutes. He was still closed off, yes, but there was something different, something vulnerable in the way he carried himself now. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. For the first time, Jason had let down a small part of the wall he'd built around himself. It wasn't much, but it was enough for Sarah to see that there was something behind his usual guarded persona, something he wasn't ready to share completely. Yet, Jason glanced over at her, his gaze lingering just a second longer than usual. You know, it's hard to let people in, he said, almost as if he were talking to himself more than to Sarah. His voice was quiet, distant, and for a moment Sarah thought she heard a trace of regret there. But he quickly turned away, as if trying to shake off whatever emotion he had just revealed. I get it, Sarah said gently, feeling a sense of empathy wash over her. She didn't push him, didn't try to ask more questions. Instead, she just stood beside him, feeling the weight of the unspoken words between them. It wasn't time yet, but Sarah felt like she had finally reached a point where Jason wasn't shutting her out completely. And for the first time, she realized that it wasn't about breaking through his walls immediately. It was about waiting, being patient, and letting him open up on his own time. As they finished their cool down and Sarah got ready to leave, she couldn't stop thinking about the cracks she'd seen in Jason's walls. They were subtle, but they were there. And for the first time, she felt like he was starting to trust her. He had shared something about how he valued consistency, about how he had learned to guard himself. It wasn't everything, but it was a glimpse into the man he was underneath all that control. Sarah didn't know how long it would take for Jason to fully open up to her, or even if he ever would. But she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be the one to help him let go of the past. And as she walked out of the gym that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting between them, something that would take time but would be worth the wait. Cracks in his walls were only the beginning, and Sarah was determined to see how much further they would spread. Want to know what happens next? Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what comes after these cracks start to widen.